Howard Hodgkin, Absent Friends, is the first ever exhibition to be held anywhere in the world devoted to Howard Hodgkin's portraits. When I first put the idea of this exhibition to Howard, he said, "At last." It was something he'd been waiting for almost all his life. He really wanted this important aspect of his work to be understood and to be able to be seen in the depth that it deserves. What we've done is to bring together 52 paintings and drawings from around the world which tell the story of the evolution of Howard's very distinctive visual language of portraiture. The exhibition begins with what I'd like to think of as a provocation, because it is the most unconventional looking portrait you can imagine. We've never ever had an exhibition of portraits in which there are no pictures of people. So the theme of the first room is memory. In that room we see the pictures that Howard made at a very early age, beginning with memoirs, which was made in 1949. And that is the recollection of a summer holiday that he spent 2 years earlier in Long Island. This was obviously a really important time for Howard in New York. He was able to make visits to the Met and to MoMA. Howard had this very early connection with modern painting. And that, I think, set him on the road to thinking that there are ways of representing experience and representing the world which are not rooted in literal description, but are more expressive and imaginative. The second room that deals with the period from 1960 onwards, you see really a pictorial record of the British art world at that time. This was when London really exploded into artistic life, and what was driving that process was pop art, abstract painting and sculpture. People tended to describe Howard as a pop artist. And of course some people even said at this time that Howard was an abstract painter, which he wasn't. And so he was something of an outsider. He didn't really fit into any of these different factions. So he dealt with it by painting these people. He disarmed enmity, he said, by painting portraits of other artists. Now, the third room of the exhibition covers the period from 1966 to the middle of the next decade. And this is the moment when Howard's paintings become increasingly complex. In order to, as he says, build up the memory, the paintings are overlaid. And that initial literal description recedes behind layers of paint, whose purpose is to give other kinds of information relating to feeling, and also the very particular nature of memory itself. What happens in memory is that the mind abstracts the experience, and certain details assume prominence, and others are filtered out completely. So the world is reshaped by the mind. That's what's happening in Howard's paintings. Now, the room that commences the second half of the exhibition I've called psychological space. It focuses on an important moment in Howard's life and career. This is the mid-1970s, and this was the point when he acknowledged his homosexuality. And this appears to have been a development that was liberating both personally and artistically, and his work changes. This is the point when he said, "I really think that things began to come together for me." And in a dramatic development, which is also a subtle one, you see Howard himself entering the picture. He's less of an observer and more of an active participant. So he is now part of the portrait. In the late 1970s, Howard's language attained what for me is maturity. This is the fully formed, sensuous language that I associate with Howard's later work. The development of space, the assertion of the painting as a physical object painted on wood, so that you've got this dialogue between the physical and the illusory. All of these things seem to come together in a new language of mark making. We've brought together a group of paintings in this much smaller room, which are very intimate in atmosphere, very sensuous in the way they're painted, but also very erotic as well in terms of their content. It's painted eau de Nil, green, and that's a reference to Howard's 1984 show at the Venice Biennale when he was the British representative. Until the 1990s, Howard's portraits still retained elements of literal description. You could still see traces of the physical appearance of the sitters evoked in the paintings. But from the 1990s onwards, his painting enters a new, really significant phase when the sitter is evoked purely in terms of marks. And this is the most remarkable advance in his visual language. But this is the clue to an extraordinary thing about Howard when he said, "I find painting agony." What that meant was that process of finding an equivalence between his feeling and the mark that would express that feeling was pure agony. But the premeditation enabled him to do it quickly and spontaneously. So this is Howard Hodgkin's last major painting. It's a self-portrait of the artist listening to music. When I invited Howard to create a new work for the exhibition, I didn't quite expect a painting of this commanding stature. But it's an imaginative space. It's a space that is a container for feeling and for memory, but it's also a container of Howard's own movements at the end of his life. And I think this painting is the most wonderful tribute to an artist that I think must be regarded as one of the truly great portraitists of the late 20th century and early 21st century.
The last time I saw Paris, our heart was young and gay. No matter how they change her, I'll remember her, Paris, the